So let's talk a little bit about fear. Now that we've kind of left it up at the door, let's just describe it a little bit, because we all know what it feels like. We all know what fear really creates in us. And it goes by a lot of names. It could be stress, apprehension, anxiety. Dread popped up when I was doing this, so I threw it in there. It's kind of a severe form of fear. But all those different names, and there's any other number of them that you can put in those spots. So anytime somebody's talking about, oh, I have this anxiety, or I'm nervous, like I just told Angela before we got in here, I'm nervous to give this presentation, and a little bit of that's okay, but if I get too nervous, I'm going to lock up and I'm not going to be able to provide you with the information that I wanted to give. So this is why we talk about these things. Referring to the timeline, fear is a future-based emotion. And it's a real emotion. Every emotion that you feel, everything that comes up for you is absolutely real and valid. And fear is one of those that is a fear-based emotion. It's something that might or might not happen in your either immediate or distant future. And that was where it was important for Steve to change his timeline, because his future, if I recall, was somewhere like right over here, and his past was about over here, I think. He was perceiving the future coming way too quickly and mixing with the past, which was actually out in front of him. And anytime you're in either a future or a past-based emotion, it prevents you from being here and now, which is living in the moment. And literally, if you are living in the moment, you cannot be fearful. So you've all probably heard the phrase, live in the moment. That's the place that you can be the happiest, et cetera, et cetera. There are many ways to describe that. It literally is true that if you're there, you will lose the fear. It will dissipate and go away. Now, if you jump back out of that and start reliving an old memory or thinking about something that's coming up, again, those fears may re-arise for you. But if you can come back to the moment, that's a great place to be, to get rid of fear. Fear can be a very positive thing. It's an attention getter. When you are afraid, wow, all of a sudden you're really paying attention to whatever it is that either startled you or is scaring the heck out of you, whatever it might be. In that way, it's a very powerful motivator. So you're at the zoo, you're walking around, all of a sudden you realize that lion over there is not in a cage. Okay, I'm paying attention, and by golly, I'm ready to do something. I'm motivated. I know that lion's hungry because they only feed it once a day and it's only 10 o'clock in the morning. So you're ready to go, fight or flight. Tremendous motivator. And what we're talking about there is a move away from strategy. You're going to get away from that thing, or you're going to fight that thing, but it's somewhere that you're not comfortable, somewhere you're disturbed, if you will, from your comfort zone. So in that way, it can be very powerful. It can get you to do things. The disadvantage to that, excuse me, is that if you only are moving away from something and you haven't really defined where it is that you want to go, who knows where you're going to end up. There could be any number of places or any number of events that occur, and they may be great, anything better than being eaten by a lion, but okay, well here I am now at the monkey cage, what's that going to look like? You have to set some outcomes. The other situation that is even a little more real to life, if you will, is fear can be paralyzing. If you've ever heard the phrase scared to death, you can actually have so much fear that you literally cease to be able to function as a human being. And animals in particular this happens more with them because they don't have the cognitive function that we do. But you can literally be scared to death. That's a pretty powerful emotion to feel that can actually end your life. And of course, somewhere in between comfortability and being scared to death is certain states of paralysis. It can actually make you feel like you don't want to move or can't move. And that's all part of that fight or flight function, which is things get constricted, you kind of sit there and you don't feel like you can really do a whole lot. So that kind of describes the energetic part of fear. The other side to that is fear is also very physical. As I've been mentioning, there are some things that happen when you sense a fearful situation. The first thing is when your brain perceives something that is stressful or fearful, there's a whole chemical chain reaction that starts in the brain and goes all the way through, and I don't know all the names to the stuff in the middle, but what it ends up as is an adrenaline shot. The adrenaline gets pumped into your system, and again, fight or flight, that instinctual brain says, all right, you're ready to go, you're ready to do whatever it is that you need to do. And part of the fight or flight response is to literally send the blood out to your extremities, to your arms and your legs, so that you can run or you can fight, whatever it happens to be. And it also sends more blood to the hindbrain, which is just inside, above the base of the skull.
And they call it the hindbrain or the instinctive brain. It's the section where our base emotions basically originate and then, of course, send out those chemicals and things. As a result, what happens? Well, all that blood that's going out here and back here is not going to your visceral organs, your internal organs, the things that are really keeping you alive in the moment-to-moment sense, if you will, and also to your cognitive brain. So some people would refer to this phenomenon as becoming dumber, which is not so nice, but basically what it's saying is you're losing blood to the creative, the learning, the thinking part of your brain, and it's all going to the instinctual, gotta get out of here, hindbrain, which again, if that lion is really there at the zoo outside the cage, it's probably what you want. If it's a job that's just stressful all the time and you're losing that ability to use your cognitive mind, then you're not going to be as successful at that job. Your immune system also gets shut down to greater or lesser extents depending on how much stress. So over time, you find you're getting a lot of colds, you have other things that are cropping up, diseases, whatever, because if you stay in stressful situations, you're shutting down the parts of you that are allowing you to grow. And if you can't grow, then things are going to start to deteriorate, obviously. These are a little bit out of order, but I'll talk about this. There's a cellular biologist by the name of Dr. Bruce Lipton, and about 40 years ago he started working on the cellular level, just studying how cellular organisms, particularly in the beginning single-cell organisms, work, how they react to stimuli in their environment. And this relates exactly to what he found out, which is that cells react either in a protection phase or a growth phase, and they can't do both at the same time. They're literally single-cell organisms. They get one or the other. It's kind of a binary system. And as a result, if you put food in a petri dish, the cells will go towards it, and if you put something that kills the cell into the petri dish, they will actually back away, but they can't do both at the same time. They've got to choose one or the other. Oftentimes we think of ourselves as being kind of a whole being, one entity, if you will. We're actually made up of 50 trillion cells on average. So when you start factoring in, how are our cells feeling? Are they feeling like they need to protect themselves, or are they feeling like they can grow? There's 50 million little voices in there deciding how things are pretty much going to go inside your body. So it becomes very powerful, and he went further to describe the opposite of fear as being love. So in the sense of a human existence, you can either be in love or in fear, but because we have those, again, multi-cells and cognitive ability, we can be somewhere on a sliding scale. We don't have to stop growing completely in order to protect ourselves. But again, those stressful situations, if we're going to keep ourselves in them, we're not going to be able to grow and learn and experience as much in those positive ways as if we got into something that we really enjoyed and didn't feel stressful, didn't feel fearful. Any questions so far? This is kind of the nuts and bolts behind it all, with how to describe it other than the actual feeling and experience of it. Question? All right. What do we have fears about? Well, you can put in pretty much whatever you want. Obviously, with the economic stuff, biggies right now for people are money, career, jobs. How are you going to get food on the table? Where's that going to come from if you lose your job or if your pay is cut? All those different types of things, and then of course anything else, relationships, parenting. We all get into, well, we don't.
I have cats.
You might, okay, so you're parenting your cat. Someday you'll have kids probably, but any number of things. Obviously terrorism and global warming and all these different things cause many different people lots of stress, which is just another form of fear. So fill in the blank there. So the green page, green for growth. Staying in love rather than in fear. Notice I did the rest, right? What do we do about fear? Well, the first thing, we already did it once, you breathe. Because as soon as you start breathing, you can feel your shoulders drop, you can feel your internal organs going, oh, thank you, a little fresh air, get some of these toxins out of here. Because your breath is a very powerful tool in cleansing your system as well as being a sustaining life force. Obviously, we can't live without our breath. But there's a lot of things that get expelled when we exhale, and there's many great things that go in to provide nutrients and cleanse us when we breathe in. So let's do that just one more time, just for